It remains one of the more spectacular cases in Iowa history. There were 8 people killed.
Okay.
You had Joe and Sarah Moore, had their 4 children. Here's 2 of the kids. And then there were 2 girls visiting that night.
Okay.
And they were the Stillinger girls, Ina and Lena.
Can you just take me back to what happened leading up to the murders?
Sunday night, the 9th of June. And they all went to church together.
Okay.
They were having a special service, which was called the Children's Day service. They had a guest that night, a minister, Lynn George Jacqueline Kelly, never been in Villisca before. And he was going to later be accused of the murder and tried for it, but acquitted. And then the 8 of them were going home. And there's a rumor, at least, that one of the children thought they saw somebody in the bushes.
I'm seeing this man standing in the trees watching. He was angry and jealous. And I hear somebody say that he was very religious.
Then the next morning, the next house west from theirs, 30 feet away, a woman named Peckham noticed that there was no activity around the Moore house.
That's the house where my clients live in now.
Yep. Peckham shouted, knocked on the door, got no response. She called Joe's brother. He and Mrs. Peckham walked through the front parlor to a back bedroom. Lying in the bed were 2 figures.
Okay.
On the bedstead behind them, there was blood, and they called for the town marshal. So he looks around the room, and the killer has taken a woman's black skirt out of a dresser and draped it over the mirror. The axe is leaning against the south wall, and it's got blood and hair on it. They had all been killed with the back of the axe. Mrs. Moore, she was the only one struck with the blade of the axe.
Interesting.
And they were so disfigured, they were mutilated beyond recognition. And their faces had been covered with a piece of clothing, and then the covers had been pulled over them. And leaning beside the axe is a 4-pound piece of slab bacon.
That's odd. Now, was there any theory about the bacon?
There was one theory that the killer rolled it into a tube and used it as a masturbatory aid.
Wow. Serial killer pops in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I just hear crying, a lot of crying. And I do see somebody being dragged across the floor. And I hear a male voice saying, "It's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay." This kid knew this guy. She knows this person very well, very well.
Okay.
And there was struggling. What is going on here? There's like physical stuff happening. Like there's men saying, "Make sure that they're dead. Make sure. There's the woman again. She says, "How can you let them do this? How can you let them do this? Aren't they your friends?" Like she's hysterically crying.
I need to find out what kind of evidence the cops collected when they got to the scene. So I'm heading to the state capitol to meet with the county sheriff. And he said he could tell me exactly what they found and why it led them to narrow down their suspect list to 4 men. Hey, Joe.
Hi, Steve. How you doing?
Thanks for meeting me. I appreciate it. Now, I wanted to talk to another cop about this. I mean, can you take me through the crime scene itself?
Basically, the crime scene was quickly deteriorated by a whole barrage of people going through there. It was tainted.
So you had civilians walking through the crime scene?
That's right.
Wow, okay. I know this guy Kelly was arrested and charged?
Reverend George Kelly. He was one of the 4 suspects. The first suspect would have been F.F. Jones. Mr. Moore had worked for him for 9 years. They got into a disagreement over wages. Mr. Moore went on his own, and when he left, he took one of Mr. Jones's biggest customers. Also, there was the rumor that Mr. Moore was having an affair with his daughter-in-law.
FF's daughter-in-law.
That's right.
It doesn't sound like it was enough for him to kill 6 kids.
Well, that's where suspect number 2 comes in, William Blackie Mansfield. It is rumored Mr. Jones had hired Mr. Mansfield to do his dirty work.
Did they ever bring him in, charge him or anything?
He had an alibi. He was actually in Chicago, Illinois, working at the time. Henry Lee Moore.
Well, he looks the part, that's for sure.
Yes, he does. He wound up 2 years later murdering his own mother and grandmother in Columbia, Missouri.
And how did he do that?
With an axe, bludgeoned them to death.
Okay. But he's arrested and charged, I guess?
He had an alibi. The only one that was ever arrested and charged was Reverend George Kelly.
Joe, what wound up leading the guys to arrest him?
Someone said that they overheard him talking about the murders when he was leaving that morning. He caught the 5:30 train out of Villisca, and they didn't discover the murders till around 7 a.m. Well, it was several years later that they arrested him. He's the one that was charged.
But acquitted twice.
Acquitted twice. And so the case is still open today.
There was a deal and it went wrong. There are 4 men involved. I did hear, like, conspiracy, like cover up. These men had marks on them, scratches, and I just hear men talking to each other about making sure that it's done. Not everyone was supposed to die.
Now that I know that Reverend Kelly went on trial for the Villisca Axe murders, I'm meeting a crime historian who's going to explain to me why there was no justice for the victims of this brutal crime.
This is the room where Reverend Kelly stood trial twice for the Villisca Axe murders.
Okay, so what happened with the first trial?
First trial ended in a hung jury.
So what went wrong?
The state had a pretty strong case. There was, of course, a confession by Kelly.
This is it?
Yes.
What was he saying?
He heard the voice of God and telling him to slay utterly, and it went on in this vein.
Wow. What other evidence did they have against him?
They had what was called the bloody shirt. A couple of days after the murders, he took one of these white shirts to a laundry in Council Bluffs.
We have a confession. We have 2 credible witnesses who say he talked about the murders before the bodies were even found on the train. Got a bloody T-shirt. To me, it sounds like a pretty decent case. So what went wrong?
Kelly was a pathetic figure. He was a very small fellow, and he was a minister. This is a Bible Belt, after all, and ministers don't go around killing kids with an axe.
So now, what went wrong on the second trial?
The second trial was just essentially a rerun that was done rather half-heartedly. The prosecution, in fact, did not even use the confession in the second trial.
One of these men was really cool with doing this, torturing. He's a little guy, probably my height, but really thin, pale. His face is weird. A little crazy dude.